Hey, 8 players got the franchise tag before that 4 o'clock Eastern time deadline. Davante Adams, Chris Godwin, 2 big-name wide receivers who get the tag. Also, Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was tagged for a 2nd straight season along with Chris Godwin. So let's get into it with our guys, Brady Quinn and our insider, Jonathan Jones. JJ, let's start with Davante Adams and Chris Godwin getting the tag. Do you think either one of them can get a long-term deal worked out?
I do. I do think that Davante Adams and the Green Bay Packers, if they can sort of meet him where he wants to go, is it going to be average annual value that's going to approach or eclipse DeAndre Hopkins? Is it going to be most money guaranteed at signing and be the highest paid NFL receiver in terms of that? One of those two things, and I would certainly look for his contract to reflect how long Aaron Rodgers should still be in town whenever those numbers and final years come in. Meanwhile, with Chris Godwin, now he holds a little bit of leverage over a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that needs the cap space. They don't really want to go into the start of free agency at that $19.2 million, and it's immovable. They want to bring that down to about $8 to $10 million and free up, 10, 11 $million or so in cap space. So they are motivated to ultimately get that long-term deal done, but they would need Chris Godwin to come sign the franchise tag in time before the start of free agency on March 16th.
Yeah, I think both players get these deals done. And now the interesting thing about Adams, and because Aaron Rodgers has been so public about the length of the contract might look like a 4-year deal, but the reality is I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to play 4 more years. I think you're looking at potentially 2 more voidable years, if not 3, based on the structure of it as to how much longer he wants to play. And so this Davante Adams deal may be a little more difficult to structure only because he might want to be able to have the opportunity to get out after 2 years or so if Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on in regards to how much he's going to be able to get paid up front in a signing bonus. They're obviously giving out a lot of cash lately up there in Lambeau Field with their restructuring of Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari and obviously trying to sign Aaron Rodgers to a deal. So Adams will reflect that to a degree, but those two have been in contact with one another, and I'm sure they're going to have a plan together moving forward. In regards to Chris Godwin, the 2nd year under the tag, I'm like, this is it. Like, you've got to be able to sign him to a long-term deal. And I think it becomes hard, knowing what the framework is, as we've talked about a little bit ago, that you're going to have to at least build in a 2nd year and a 3rd year under the tag as the first couple years, at least the floor of what a long-term extension would look like for him. And on top of that, he's coming off of an injury, a torn ACL. And every team's going to look at you as a depreciating asset, not knowing what you're going to even be able to look like in 2022 coming off of that injury. So the reality is both these deals will probably get done. It might take some time, but I think the next deadline to really look at when we'll get these deals done is the deadline for them to agree to these long-term deals. That's not till July 15th this summer.
All right, so things went according to plan with the tags today. There were some players that did not get tagged, as our Jonathan Jones and our other insiders told you. One of those guys is J.C. Jackson for the New England Patriots, a great all-pro cornerback. Pete Prisco has put together his list of the top free agents, and 1 and 2 are guys that weren't eligible to be tagged. But then 3, 4, 5 are the guys that were not tagged today. J.C. Jackson, Chandler Jones, Carlton Davis. Brady, since you like to pick apart Pete's rankings so much, what do you think of where he's placed the 3 guys who weren't tagged today?
I think the interesting part is he's putting some older guys in there, right? Von Miller, Chandler Jones, guys who are, 30 plus. Usually, what does he say? Old and slow, you must go. So it's kind of surprising that that's how he's ranked them. He didn't take into account age. Maybe that's more of a reflection of Pete Prisco getting so old. He wants people to forget about how old he is. But no, I mean, that list, as far as what you see on tape and what the value of these veteran players could bring to those teams, it's the reality of what they bring at this point. Solid play, at least for a year or two. And I think you'll see deals that are structured similarly where the first couple of years is where they'll make the majority of their money. Then after that, it's a 3-4 year deal. That's where the onus will be on the team, where they can get out from underneath it, especially with some of those older players. Look, those players may end up in different destinations. I think there's a chance, though, for guys who are, for example, Von Miller, there's been rumors he wants to go back, play in Denver maybe, but, why not try to run it back in LA? McVay's decided to try to come back to run it back. There's some other pieces that may be doing it. We may see him have a change of heart or change of mind at this point in time in his career. He's won a couple of Super Bowls. So why not try to win more if you can and be in a place like LA, unless he feels like with the Russell Wilson trade, maybe Denver gives him a better shot and he'd like to go back to play for the Broncos and finish his career there. I mean, there's all of those sorts of decisions that start to weigh in on you when you get to that point in time in your career. When you're in your 30s, you're starting to think about the end of your career and what it may look like. But, that list is fine. It's just, as Pete would say, just a bunch of older guys on there.
Yeah, and it's what you want, right, Brady? If you want that all-pro left tackle that Teron Armstead can be, well, with it comes age, and with it comes the injuries that he's dealt with the past 2 seasons with the New Orleans Saints. So, yeah, when he's healthy, I agree with him being number one. It's just that, unfortunately, the last couple of years, he hasn't been that healthy. In terms of Von Miller, he looked fantastic in January, but that's also because he didn't play half the year. If you're going to be signing him to a long-term deal, you want him for 17 games or something close to it along with the postseason. And so that's a consideration. J.C. Jackson is a guy who's gotten his hands on every ball that's come his way, seemingly, in the past couple of years, but he's been doing it with Bill Belichick there in New England. And so a change of scenery for him. Is he going to be able to still be that guy? Carlton Davis, another guy who's benefited from a pass rush there in Tampa. And then, of course, Chandler Jones that we've talked about. He had the injury a couple years ago, bounces back, but he's on the wrong side of 30 for someone trying to get paid. And so I have no issue at all with the rankings of those guys, but certainly NFL teams are going to be looking at these players and deciding and placing a value on them. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to place a value on offensive linemen. The Miami Dolphins may very well pay a couple of free agent offensive linemen. Let's not forget about Brandon Scherf right there at the interior of the offensive line. He's a guy who is absolutely going to be paid after being tagged 2 consecutive years in Washington.
8 players get the tag today ahead of the 4 p.m. deadline. Brady, do you have a winner? I can't imagine that Green Bay doesn't feel like a winner keeping Davante Adams and potentially getting him to a long-term deal eventually.
Yeah, I think you match that with the fact that Aaron Rodgers decided to come back to Green Bay, and then you tag Davante Adams, and you keep everything in put. You'd have to look at their chances, too, of winning the NFC. Now, it's heightened with the fact that Tom Brady's retired, at least for the time being. We don't know if he'll decide to come back at a later point in time. But it seems like a much more clear path, too, now that Russell Wilson's out of Seattle. That's one less Super Bowl winning quarterback that you've got to deal with on that path to a Super Bowl. So, to me, the Green Bay Packers are the biggest winner with all the news that's come out today and the ability to tag Davante Adams and then have him sign that. It's not like he's going to pull a Le'Veon Bell and not show up because Aaron Rodgers decided to go elsewhere and he wants out. This is a scenario where Rodgers is coming back. You can tag Adams, try to get him under a long-term deal, and now you've got a legitimate shot of going and winning an NFC championship and playing in the Super Bowl and trying to win another one.
Yeah, it's going to get to like March 19th, and some team is going to spend a whole bunch of money in free agency the first couple days, and we're going to say that team won because they spent a whole lot of money on a bunch of guys whose names we know. Frankly, the Green Bay Packers have won free agency. They were able to retain Aaron Rodgers, who is not only the reigning NFL MVP, but the back-to-back NFL MVP, the 4-time NFL MVP, and they were able, of course, and it wasn't difficult, to tag Davante Adams because he frankly had no say in being tagged. But the Green Bay Packers so far have won free agency in order or by virtue of keeping those 2 guys in-house. They're going to pay for it, no question at all. They're going to be paying for it, but they are, without question, the big winners. The other ones that I'll give you, the Miami Dolphins, by tagging Mike Gesicki, whether they are ultimately going to have to go into arbitration and pay him a little bit more because they've used him slightly more like a wide receiver than a tight end traditionally, we'll see. But this still keeps the option for them open to reach a long-term deal with Emmanuel Ogbah as well. So they can still keep everything in front of them that they want, but they wanted to make sure that Tua had a safety blanket, and so tagging him was obviously the right move.
Okay, winners, Dolphins and Packers. Brady, do you have a loser from today?
Look, at this point, I think you'd have to say it has nothing to do with the franchise tag. It's probably Seattle. You trade away Russell Wilson. Yeah, you get a lot of compensation in return, but is Drew Lock really the long-term answer? He wasn't in Denver. Why would he be in Seattle? The players they got in replace, Noah Fant and Shelby Harris, they obviously help your roster out immediately. But, you're looking at the draft picks. This isn't a great year for quarterbacks in the draft. So, are you in a spot or position where you can even get Malik Willis, or do you have to use some of that draft capital if you feel like he's Russell Wilson's replacement to trade up to get him? So there's a lot of question marks right now about Seattle. I know they had their first non-winning season with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, but kind of crazy to see how things transpired over the past year after their first non-winning season there in Seattle. Everything's kind of blown up. They're moving in a different direction. Maybe that came in large part due to Russell Wilson's wishes, but the truth of the matter is you're going to find out what life is like after Russell Wilson. And with the way that defense has played of late, it's not looking too good right now for the Seahawks in the NFC West.
No, it's not. And so right now they do appear to be losers. But Brady, you're right. They did get a lot of compensation. And so you lose Russell Wilson. How much compensation is enough? Well, it's really hard to replace a top 6 quarterback in the NFL. Is it ever going to be enough? But if they want to make a move for a veteran, if they have an eye on someone, if it's not necessarily a guy in the draft, they now have the ammunition in terms of draft capital in order to make that move if they so wish. But you're looking at a loser. The fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars are having to tag Cam Robinson for a second consecutive year, I don't think he's making anybody's top 5 list for left tackle. The fact that they have the luxury to tag him 2 consecutive years under 2 different regimes, I guess it makes it okay, but it's only okay because they've been bad, that they can do it and still have plenty of cap space to do what else that they want to do. This, frankly, probably should have gotten done a year ago. So I'd look at them. And then also the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about them earlier. Yes, they can keep Jesse Bates in the fold, but when you've already paid a draft classmate of his in Sam Hubbard, when you've already paid Trey Hendrickson, when you're going to be paying all these offensive linemen, Jesse Bates has been putting the work in there in Cincinnati. He should be getting paid there. And frankly, a franchise like Cincinnati that has had to fight against some sort of negative narratives over the years, and frankly, true narratives as it relates to how cheap the franchise has been, they should reward those that they have grown and harvested over the years. And so I ultimately think a deal's going to get done, but if I have to pin a loser on somebody, I'd just love to see that deal have already gotten done for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Tag deadline was the story going into the day, but the story of the day, the quarterback moves. Aaron Rodgers not moving, staying put in Green Bay. And
do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.